Everybody, it's Professor Snart here, checking in a more traditional format for me, or for these video announcements with me talking, but we're actually looking at our course. So we're in only day 2 at this point, and I certainly won't do these things every day, but they do get pretty regular, especially in our condensed format. But if you're just arriving to our course, make sure that you back up from this video and watch the very first one, kind of giving you that broader perspective on what we're looking at here. Hopefully you've worked through the orientation material, not really course content or related to English 1102 per se, but just some strategies, things to be aware of for being an effective online student. And then there is a very brief quiz. So this is one of the things that will come up kind of repeatedly in our course, but I'll say like really bluntly right now. If we get a little deeper into the course and I'm looking at the gradebook and I can see that people haven't done the orientation quiz, it tells me a lot about, or suggests to me a lot about how people are engaging with the course or kind of not engaging with the course. So not only did you not do it, even though it says read me first and it's right there in the kind of list of things to do, but it also means that you're not watching this right now where I'm kind of reiterating to make sure you do it. It's not super time intensive, not a lot of points attached to it, but it's a really good indicator for me early on how people are interacting with the course. So for this announcement, I want to spend just a really brief kind of mini orientation, just a quick sort of highlights here, but also actually look at some of the units and of course our due dates coming up. So one of the things though related to that, like how you're interacting with the course is, I'll pop right into, I'm going to go to unit, let's see, number 3 might be a good one. So this is a little bit down the road for us, although not really that much given our just 5-week format. But this is a typical unit where, we start with a kind of broad overview. Here's the objectives, but then there's multiple folders to work through. So I kind of understand the impulse that people feel because we're moving pretty quickly. You have tons of other things going on right now, coursework, actual work, just, family stuff, whatever's going on, to find what's the thing I need to do so I can get started and do it as quickly, efficiently as possible. So I get that impulse, but it's one that you really have to be careful of, because it would be basically like skipping all of the classes in a typical course, but then showing up on test day and, okay, I'm here to do the work, where the points are, and then hoping that you'll do well. So some of the stuff, especially early on in our course, you can maybe sort of fumble through without doing a lot of the actual content of the course. But as we get a little bit deeper, especially into the essays that we write, which is really where the points are, that rushing to where the work needs to be done just isn't going to work. You're going to end up spending, in your effort to be efficient, you're going to sort of bomb the course, and it's going to be a complete waste of time. So I really want to stress to people to slow down, and I know that feels like a weird thing to do in our 5-week format, but what I mean is that in a unit like this one, where there is a lot of content, this is like going to class, you really do want to make sure that you're working through each of the folders, whether it's video material, kind of the multimedia stuff, just text. This is the stuff that we would cover if we were in class together. If you had questions about it, you could email me. We could set up a virtual conference. So it's not like you just have to figure it out on your own, but it is stuff that you have to process. And then there's more of it here, right? So again, stuff to look at, sort of understand how this is going to fit into us working towards writing an essay. This is a component of what we're going to be practicing throughout the course. There's a quiz here to do, so sort of a minor point thing. But if you were just sort of breezing through and be like, okay, there's a quick quiz, that doesn't look like anything, oh, paragraph assignment, I'm just going to jump to that because I'm really tight on time, etc., etc. Well, you find that there's a reading to do, which is going to take a little bit of time. There's a quiz, again, fairly small points, but hopefully directing your attention to some of the important aspects of the reading, getting you to read closely, and then the assignment. If you were to jump from into this unit and then directly into this paragraph assignment, you could probably fumble it together, like I said before, but it's not going to be that great. And by the time we get to an essay where this is the conceptual material that you really need to put into practice, because you've, let's say, skipped so many classes, if you get what I'm saying, it's going to be really, really hard to do well. So it's important even as we're compelled to rush forward, to slow yourself down a bit and make sure that you're clicking like read me first. That means read me first. It means read through or watch the full orientation, read through the folder material, and of course do the quiz. So when I'm seeing in the gradebook in a couple of days that people haven't done this quiz, it's like, I think 10 points out of a whole 1,000. So points-wise, not that big a deal. But it really is like a red flag for how people are engaging with and working through the course. So it's really important to make sure to understand like how you're participating in the course as a student. Working through the material is basically like going to class. Then the assessments that we do, whether it's a quiz, a brief paragraph, the full essay, are your opportunity to show, yes, I've gone to class, yes, I understand the conceptual stuff, and now I can apply it in this assessment situation. So sometimes I use the analogy, and it's a simplified case, but let's pretend you're in a history class or some other like really information-heavy discipline. So it's a history from 1800 to the present, let's say, American history. You go to class, you learn a bunch of dates and facts about things. You go to the midterm, it's a simple, let's say, Scantron. You just bubble in right or wrong, information that you learned from the textbook, from going to class, the usual stuff, right? English really works the same way. It's maybe not so black and white all the time, although it is much less subjective than people realize. But you're still just going to class, or in our case, engaging with the online material, processing it, understanding it, reaching out to me if you have questions, participating in discussion boards, doing quizzes, those smaller point assessments. And then our essay is like that bigger exam. It's your opportunity to show that you have gone to class, have understood the material, and can now apply it. So it's really not that different, even though some people feel like English, especially writing, is some sort of like magical thing that you're either good at or not, and there's a secret set of things that I'm idiosyncratically looking for when I look at an essay. It's really not. I don't want to make it sound boring or anything like that, but it is, the way we're looking at it, a little more black and white and formulaic. There are certain conceptual composition theories or ideas that we're going to look at, we're going to practice, and then we're going to put into that major assessment the essays that we write. So if you're doing well on those, it means that you're reflecting course content that we've covered. If you're not doing well, it's not that you just don't know how I want it or whatever. It's that there's basic things that we've covered that aren't being reflected in the work that you're producing. And again, that goes back to like how you're engaging with the course and sort of fighting that impulse to do things quickly or what you think is efficiently, but often what we think is efficient ends up coming back to kind of bite us. So anyway, let's go back to the mini orientation. So you'll see obviously our syllabus, right? Course policies, our textbook information is all here where you'd expect it to be, so you can review those. The grading guidelines, important to look at, especially for things like discussion boards. I've tried to make that as, I guess I'll say, transparent as possible, even though it's kind of hard to say exactly because each of the discussion boards is a little bit different. So there's always a discussion or a post and then replies. The points are divided. The really great post, right? The sort of effective one, baseline, just getting the job done, and then incomplete, late, or totally off the map. So you really, the sign of a good post in most cases is that you're bringing together multiple threads. You're responding to a prompt in an interesting way, but you're also pulling in things from a reading that we've done, course content that we've covered, material from earlier units, once we get deeper into the units. So that's really that exemplary full points, bringing lots of other things together. And again, it just sort of goes down. The less you're doing of that, the less of those points you're getting. Same thing kind of goes for replies, not just a yeah, I agree or disagree or I thought, and then you have a sentence, but really kind of developing beyond just a couple of minutes of typing a post that really does respond by like quoting from the original that you're replying to. That's a big benchmark for me. If I see that going on, then we can begin to think about points up in that sort of exemplary category. And again, remember that, like it or not, Blackboard timestamps everything. So if I see that you've done 2 posts and they both took a total of 10 minutes, you know, maybe they're exemplary somehow, but it's unlikely just because you don't have enough time to be building in all of these components and really developing it. Same thing goes for posts themselves. If you're always the person who's like bumping right up against that deadline, that's telling me something. So just be careful, not just about the grading guidelines here, but about your time on task and the evidence that we have just by default of working in Blackboard. So that's some important grading stuff. There won't be tons and tons of comments that come back, largely so I can turn work around back to you in like a timely fashion, and it's not so out of date that we've moved way past it because I'm giving tons of comments. But keep in mind that the grade sort of points you back to, did your post do this stuff? Is it more in here or more in here? So the grade is the grade, but it also kind of implies some feedback along these lines. Okay, so beyond this, right, once we get into the flow of our course, it's really the units and the due dates tabs that become the most important for us. So due dates is always where I would start, not really in the units, but always knowing where we're at, when things are due, right? Reminding that we have a double due date system. So main work initial posts are due by noon on the day of whatever the due date is. So in this case, our first one is Thursday, June 1st. And then replies, we have a little kind of window there so that we're getting all of these posts done earlier, then we have some time for replies. Now, there's nothing to say that you have to wait until the due date to post or right up against it. You can get a jump and post, again, a little bit earlier. Because we move so quickly, there's not really a whole ton of time. And I really caution against moving too far ahead because most of our units have this post and reply system. And I've seen where students, again, trying to work efficiently, I get what they're trying to do, is jumping ahead, doing a post here, or let's say down here, but then sort of forgetting to go back in and do the replies once we come back around to that. So again, in an effort to work smarter and more efficiently, which I understand, you end up sort of shooting yourself in the foot a little bit. You'll also notice that once we get into the course, the rhythm of the due dates, you sort of get into that habit. And I would also encourage people to, use a day planner, whether it's virtual or physical, and mark these out for yourself so you really have a clear sense of what is due when, keeping in mind that double due date system, noon, end of day. So we have Unit 1 due pretty soon, mostly an introductions unit, not a lot of heavy lifting there, not a lot of like composition content necessarily, just kind of getting to know each other. But then I want to draw people's attention to Units 2 and 3. Again, because of our compressed format, we have 2 units due on the same day, June 6th, Tuesday. So we'll wrap up here Thursday night, and that gives you Friday, and we kind of do have to incorporate the weekends a little bit around to the end of the day or noon on Tuesday to get both Units 2 and 3 done. Going a little bit more quickly here on the front end gives us a little bit more flexibility as we get into the major essay, essay 1, and then we turn right around from that basically into our final essay. So overall, the plan of the course is to scaffold some skills through these units, whether it's composition stuff, source-based stuff, whatever, and then pull it all together. So it might feel like kind of late in the class that we're doing our first essay, but to me it wouldn't make sense to do an essay, let's say here, and then grade you on it on stuff that we haven't even covered until like here, right? It would be like doing that midterm in history in week 2 when you haven't even covered half of the dates that you're supposed to cover. So really important to be aware of that close due date, what's here, what's right around the corner, and also kind of the bigger picture as we move through the course. And then of course the units themselves. So all of the work is contained in the units here. Always be careful about multiple folders or multiple things to do within a unit. I try to lay out an objective, right? Multiple folders, so there's things to do. So when you finish one, don't forget and not do the other stuff. So you're building a home page, basically just introducing yourself. It's really important that we see each other for this, and I'm going to show you my one of my 2 least favorite buttons. So we're here. I'm going to create my journal entry to introduce myself. Notice this little button up here. If I close it, half of the, or third of the, 2/3 of the options that I need for editing my post disappear, which totally sucks. I don't know why you would even build that button. But anyway, if you're not seeing like a whole bunch of these other options here, make sure you pull this one down, and that'll give you the really important one, which is the one that allows you to insert the image so it shows up right in your post, not just as an attached file. My other least favorite button is one that I can barely even get to. It hides the course menu, and I'm not even going to click it because I don't want to have to fuss to get it back. But like, why would you do that? Why would I don't get it. Anyway, don't click that one. And if this one happens to be like that, make sure you open it up. And this editor, even though we're in the journal tool here, is the same one you'll see for discussion boards or like any other kinds of tools that we use where you're doing sort of like text work here. If you're seeing a limited range of options, ta-da. So favorite button, or least favorite button number 1, least favorite button number 2. All right, back to our units then. So introducing yourself, one in your home page, and then we're kind of duplicating this assignment by introducing yourself through a discussion board. The purpose is really, again, to get us used to using the discussion board, which is a tool that we'll use throughout our course. You might already be familiar with this, so it's no big deal. But if you haven't worked in Blackboard before, or need a refresher, this is a good low-stakes way that you can just introduce yourself. Don't cut and paste the same stuff from the home page, even though it is kind of the same like basic information. But it gets people used to doing a post, doing the replies, getting used to our double due date system, right, immediately in our course, because it's something that'll show up again and again in the units. So it's probably going to feel like it's like it duplicates, but that's semi-intentional. All right, so units 2 and 3 then get us more into the content of our course. Again, important to work through the material, watching this little video. There's a couple things about plagiarism, which I'll say more about as we get a little bit deeper into the course. A quiz, a reading, and attached here is a discussion board. So again, if you're not super familiar with Blackboard, notice that the way to access discussion boards is just the title of that content piece is clickable, and that'll take you to the discussion board. So again, keep in mind that not just this is due, but now units 2 and 3 are due, so that's a lot of stuff to do. It just is. There's kind of like no way around it in our 5-week format. And again, it's really core conceptual material, especially the shape of an essay paragraph. I'm not going to rehearse it here because it's presented in a number of formats in the folder itself. But really crucial, MLA citation, the whole research aspect to English 1102, super important. And then we have a very brief assignment that is explained at length here to give you, lay out all the requirements. So what you're supposed to do is really, really transparent. It's supposed to be no mystery. But you do have to manage your time effectively, so you're not scrambling to get it done, skipping through the stuff that you really need to do the assignment effectively. You need to be posting on time and not late, not a little bit late, not a lot late. You really want to get off to a good start here in our course. Most of this stuff is relatively low point level, but it's easy if you don't get going and up to speed really quickly. Again, our condensed format, you can kind of nickel and dime yourself out of an A pretty quickly just by missing a quiz, you miss an assignment, you miss a due date, whatever, early on. Even though the essays are really where the major points for the class are. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to leave it at that. This is a much longer announcement than I'll normally do because it contains sort of a lot of big picture overview stuff. Normally, we're just going to focus right on our due dates, what we're looking at, and what's coming around the corner. Again, both due on the same day, right? And then, of course, getting into the units themselves to actually tackle the work, whether it's readings, quizzes, content that's in Blackboard, or, of course, core to our class is doing those writing assignments. Okay, so I know it's a little bit overwhelming. Again, do your best to push through, develop a routine for yourself, block out time that is specifically your time to work on this course, just like as if you had to go to a classroom and sit there. And by all means, if you have questions or concerns, you can reach out to me by email.